Da 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 da. What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. Today was an inside day, but it was an inside day getting little chores done. I am out and about tomorrow. It was a dark, dreary day, and the sun is just starting to peek through the clouds for the first time. And I think that's pretty much it for the rain until Sunday when we're expected to go back into it. I don't know about anybody else out there, but June here in Manitoba is usually our rainy season. I appreciate the rainy season because I'm somebody who's truly connected with Mother Nature, and I understand that these trees, right? They really do need the moisture. They need the rain. The fields, the farmers, if you don't know, we have a lot of rural farming going on here in the prairies, right? And we need that rain. The more rain we have, the more crops we have, the more crops they have, the more abundance it is out there for the consumer. And in the end, the consumer will benefit from that, right? Because maybe the prices will be down a little bit if there is an abundance, right? So I look forward to seeing June roll in, see the rain roll in, and we talked about it this week. I do love the rainy days, right? It kind of shuts you down, but soon as the rainy season is over, right? Then we start grumbling about how hot it is, right? I went outside yesterday for a few minutes and well, for a few minutes. I went out for a couple of hours, but I was outside the building with the other tenants of the building, and they were all grumbling about how hot it is. Yes, it's hot, but in the wintertime, you're grumbling about how cold it is, right? Appreciating that summer is coming. And now that summer's coming, we should do that appreciating, right? And even though it is rainy season, a little bit of rain never hurt anybody, and it benefits a great deal. Hello, Eugene. How are you doing tonight? Thank you so much for popping in, and I always appreciate that you give me that thumbs up when you walk in the door. That's always appreciated. I hope your week is going really well. We're coming down to the wire on the week, aren't we? This week is going really, really fast. I don't know if it's just me getting older. It just seems that time is flying by, right? It's really flying by. And that's supposed to be a good sign. That means you're staying active, you're moving, you're getting things done, and I appreciate that because quite often I feel like I'm not getting enough done, being highly sensitive, being right, that person whose self worth comes through the reflection, the mirroring, the other eyes of people out there, right? My self worth does come from others, and that's the way the programming has been set up for me during the course of my lifetime. It is something that I have always struggled with. I have built up a lot of skills, a lot of understandings, but a lot of things are so deep rooted. It will take lifetimes, right? To crawl ourselves out of that hole. And it's just not, for my generation, but the generation moving forward. And I see that advancement. I see that movement forward going on in my own family, right? Careers that would not have even been a thought in the history of our families on, well, I'm not going to say both sides because you guys hear me talk all the time that my family's my parents are from two extremes, right? My father's side has struggled for generations and generations. I think my mother's side has struggled emotionally and mentally, but economically, they probably did quite well. And sometimes that money makes the boo boos feel a little bit better, makes things feel a little bit more bearable. It becomes a coping mechanism in being, I don't know, frivolous with that money, always not worrying about the roof over your head or whether or not your bills are going to be paid for. On my father's side, that struggle with money put a lot of pressure on his family, his parents, and himself. But if you look at it, that was basically those problems that were in his life that made him cope the way he did. And if he didn't have that stress and that worry, I think my dad would have done very well for himself. He wouldn't have found that need to chase after the big win, right? Because that's what gambling is all about. I am studying gambling now, being a gambler in my own life, and I'm looking and watching gamblers online. At first I was in there because, right, it was something that I really enjoyed, that gave me that dopamine rush to make me excited to possibly win something big. Right, I won something big all the time. But you know what? I lost even more than what I won. And I knew that. And I watched these guys online. And it's just not guys online, it's couples online, it's women too, gambling. And some of these people, because I've got a few that I am watching, and I've been watching them probably for maybe 2 months now. And I can see that the struggle is there. Now, they have a big following. That's how they got into it, isn't to build that following. But in order to keep their following and in order to keep growing in their YouTube channels, they have to gamble, and they're gambling and they're struggling. And when they lose, they're losing big. They're losing really big. And I'm sympathizing and empathizing for them because now I know that they're in the system now, that they are hooked good. I never posted on YouTube me playing. I was kind of in, not embarrassed. I'm going to have to say I was ashamed of myself, and I would never, you know, admit to anybody that was gambling addict. It just happened to be something to kill time. It made boring being fun. These were the excuses that I made. I didn't drink, so I gambled instead. It was a way of being social without being really social, right? I had all kinds of excuses for gambling, but gambling is a gambling. And in truth, it was how I coped with my life. And I can just feel for these guys and these couples and these women because not only are they kind of chained, right, because of their YouTube channels, they're chained to the habit of gambling. There, right? I didn't have that. I could have quit in a moment if I had the strength to, right? It doesn't matter if these people have the strength to quit gambling. They have that chain to being content creators in what they do. So it's a double whammy for them. And they are struggling. They're pretending. One guy, he's down for the year $100,000. Oh my goodness. I was bad. I was bad. $20,000 a year. I was putting more than $20,000 a year. I was putting into the video lottery terminals, right? That's what I did with my time in gambling. And it was to cope with my life. They're not coping with their life. They're trying to save their channel. And so I'm sympathizing and empathizing with them in that too, because for me, my channel, my brand is everything. What would I do with myself if I didn't have that commitment to myself to show up every single day? Right? Not just in my channel, but expanding myself so I can be good in what I do. In order for them to be good in what they do, they have to gamble. They have to put themselves in those dangerous situations. Hello, Tammy, that pull them down. I worry for them. I really do worry for them. And I worry also. I know I will never ever ever touch another machine. But I also know if I spend too much time in their content, that takes me away from those topics and in those understandings of emotions that I want to also be an expert in my field in, right? I explore the inside and the outside. And yes, I'm exploring the inside in being a spectator and a student in somebody else doing that to their life. But I can't help them in any way. I got the message. I can clearly see what's going on and what's going to happen. Do I want to sit here and be a spectator to somebody else's downfall? No, I don't. So it has to come to an end, right? I got the message. I have that understanding, but I do not want to be a spectator and somebody else going down the tube, whether it's in alcohol or drugs or sex addiction or shopping addiction, or there is so much, anything that you do compulsively that takes you away from doing better by yourself or doing better by your family, right? In being the example for others, that is damaging. I'm grateful I have that understanding. So, the mission for me is to say goodbye to these people that I've become attached to, right? But it's that empathy and that sympathy that I have for them. And of course, being content creators, you get to know them, right? You get to know them and you want the best from that for them. But it's like having a child or friend or a partner who is deep in their addictions, and when you're with them, right, while they're doing that, that makes you a participant in that, not just a spectator in it, not just a student in it. Yes, you're getting that message, but you're getting that message pretty quick because it affects your life pretty quickly, right? And you get to see people that you used to admire, right? People that did well in their incomes. And so now you see them losing their incomes. They used to be happy people, right? Now they're not happy anymore. They're totally stressed because the bill money is going to other sources rather than within their family. and to things that they can do in their lives with that money. They become liars, right? I lied to my husband all the time as to why I was coming home from work without tip money. I would say I had to put in the gas tank, right? Had to pay the house bills. And I wasn't even paying the house bills. I was juggling my bills, right? So it makes you a liar. It really does. And, for somebody who is totally adamant that they are not going to be a liar, that they're going to be genuine and honest and be the example for others, because these are people that were probably hardworking, honest, right? But because they made that decision, they took that action to be coping in a way that's not good for you. There are, right, very few ways that you can addictively cope in that will be good for you, right? Little things like exercise, but you can overdo it at the gym. If you're going to the gym 5 days a week, then you're taking yourself away from friends and family and being social because you're doing something by yourself. And in that guilt and shame, that was mine, right? And I was no stranger to guilt and shame to start with. And once I started gambling, that shame was there. It took me, a couple of decades, right? Soon as those video lottery terminals came into the bars, I was working in the bar. And my entire career at the bar, I was chasing the big one, right? And it was funny that, I chose gambling. I chose lots of things, but, I tried to get off these things as soon as I recognized that it had become a habit because I knew I was habitual. I would get off of it. But that gambling had a hook in me, right? And my job and my workplace made it convenient for me to be a gambling addict. Then there is the mirroring back that my father was also a gambling. So I had that emotional attachment to being addicted to something, right? My dad could be that. My dad was a good person. My dad had amazing traits. He was a good father, a good man, well respected in his community. If he could do that, then I could too. And so then I'm not taking all that blame. I'm kind of scooting it to my father, who had been passed away for 20 years by that time. So shame on me in that, right? It's not just in the gambling. Like I said, it's anything that we become habitual in, right? And lots of things are acceptable, right? Go to the beer store and get alcohol. It's a business, it's a legit business. But that legit business is making people habitual. And when you're habitual, you are asking for trouble, right? In so many different ways. Money, respect. People don't want to be around you. You lose your friends, you lose your family. I'm an example for that too. I attached that reasoning in my marriage in it failing 100%, right? It wasn't the only reason, but it was a big part of the reason, right? Sometimes it can be the excuse when you don't want to admit the real reason in something not working out. But people can't be around that, right? Because the children see that. You have responsibilities within the household. You have responsibilities to your community, whether it's your friends, your family, your church, right? your gym. You have these responsibilities and you fall backwards in it, right? It doesn't matter. There are not too many healthy addictions out there. It's why when people do their New Year's resolutions and they start their diets on New Year's Day, right? 90% of those diets fail within the first week. The first week. The reason being is that you can't give up an addiction without bringing on another addiction. And that's why people join the gym when they start a diet. They decide to go running, right? Not only does it help for the weight to come off easier, but at the same time, it's an addiction and it's something to do. It's a way to produce that dopamine that people need, right? Because the overeating was an addiction, it was a coping mechanism. You need another coping mechanism when you release one. When people quit smoking, what do? They start chewing the nicotine gum, right? They start chewing nicotine gum. When I go to the grocery store, I specifically walk through the pharmacy and I look at that shelf and it blows my mind. I suggest to anybody take a look at that shelf where that nicotine gum is and see the mess and the emptiness of it constantly. And people are now chewing that gum because now it's become an addiction because it's something they can do at work, right? They can't have a cigarette at work. They can't have a cigarette in a restaurant, right? I don't know if it is in the States, but here in Canada, you can't smoke in public places anymore. Tammy, can you let me know in the comments if there are any rules when it comes to smoking cigarettes in public places? I'd be curious to know that. I've never asked that question before. But here in Canada, you can't smoke in a restaurant. You can't smoke in any public area at all. You just can't, right? So, you know, lots of times when you say, oh, I'm a big believer in stepping down, right? In your addictions, right? I started smoking to lose weight. To some extent, it did help, right? But you're only picking up another addiction. I had friends who started smoking pot, right, in order to quit drinking. I know people who got off of heroin and cocaine by going to drinking instead. You can't quit a bad habit without picking up another habit, right? My YouTube channel was my addiction for coming off of the gambling machines, right? That was my new addiction. I needed new camera gear. Being a YouTube creator kept me out on the roads. When I was out on the roads and out in Mother Nature, right? Out in the rural areas, it did something to my soul. It gave me that break, right? I needed to be forcibly, right? Nobody yanked me. Nobody was going to help me with that. That was my problem, right? But I helped myself unknowingly, maybe knowingly, because I had to make that choice, right? I couldn't do both, right? I would have found a way, I'm sure. But it was my saving grace. This channel has saved my life literally in so many different ways. But, I would say if anybody is looking to let go of an addiction, something that's truly destroying their life, right? Really destroying their life. And there, the bad ones, right? There's so many out there. There are healthy ones too, Anything habitual is an addiction. Anything that is a coping mechanism is an addiction. But there are addictions like doing puzzles, hobbies like metal detecting and bottle digging, being out on the back road, right? My YouTube channel, I never considered it a hobby, right? Though others might think that it is, right? It was my intent to make it big in being an urban explorer, being an outdoor explorer. But it is in our determination not to be pulled down, not to be disappointed. And the idea is to get out a notepad and make a list of healthy addictions, right? Maybe it's not your favorite thing to do, but maybe it's something that's big enough to keep you busy. Maybe you need a step down, right? Right? But keep in mind, in doing a step down, you might fall back to the original and you have to give up the second one, right? You can't be doing both because you'll just beat yourself up and even feel worse. That guilt and shame will come on to you with such a force, right? I feel really bad for the people that are now addicted to the nicotine gum. The nicotine is still in it. And that nicotine gum is super, super expensive, like super expensive. But it's still another addiction. And those shelves would not be wiped out the way they are if people really, truly were not hooked on them, right? What do you have in your life right now that's a healthy addiction? What's your hobbies? What are your interests? Right? Reading a books, right, can be an addiction, right? Delving in and working on emotions can be an addiction. And I recognize that. And yes, I say to myself, I want to be the best at it, right? I want to be good at what I do, but I'm hooked on it, right? Because if I didn't have my channel, if I didn't attach working on the inside, understanding emotions to my channel, what would I do with my time? Would I be a gambling addict again? Would I be delving into smoking cigarettes again? Possibly, right? But I'm grateful, like I said, having these healthy addictions, right? And I consider my YouTube channel a healthy addiction because it serves me. Like I said, it really feels like it saved my life. It very least helped me to understand emotions, helped to understand where I was in my addictions. And in being on these platforms, I get to be the example for others. I get to be the example for other people that it can be done, that it can be done because it can be done and it can be done in a way that you don't lose your joy for life. Okay, that's a big one too. I've seen people come off their addictions and because they don't have something else to immerse themselves in, right? Whether it's gardening or, like I said, doing puzzles or metal detecting or bottle digging or a YouTube channel yourself or double or delving in to understanding your own emotions as to why you do that, right? Or spending more time with your friends or more time with your family, keeping yourself busy, bringing in some extra income, whatever it takes to get you away from that compulsive habit that is only a coping mechanism. For what? Only you know, right? Only you know. I share, you guys know my coping mechanisms and why I gambled, right? Because I talk about it because I am the example. I am the evidence for others. If I didn't talk about it, if I stayed in that shame, right? I wouldn't be talking. If I was gambling right now, do you think I would be sharing that? Right? No, I wouldn't be sharing that because my shame and my guilt would not allow me to do that. Come off your addiction and be the example for others and share that. Maybe you'll get addicted to being the evidence, right? Be addicted to be that example for others that it can be done, right? That's, I think, pretty amazing. Addictions are so prevalent right now, right? We are all addicted to something. We're not talking about it. We're not sharing it. We're not showing it. We're doing it in the dark, right? We're turning ourselves into loners, right? Because our addictions are so compulsive that we're doing it all the time that we become reclusive in it, right? So it makes me also recognize I'm becoming reclusive in what I do. In exploring the inside, I studying all the time. I'm sitting in lectures in different perspectives and I find that interesting, but it's also compulsive and I have to recognize that and recognize the reasons for that and slowly wean myself off, right? Do it slowly. I am a big believer. You guys know I'm a big believer in the baby steps, right? It's necessary to get the job done, but sometimes we don't like those 360 turns in our lives. Sometimes it's physically, mentally, and emotionally excruciating, right? And it's not maybe, it is, right? Because I've gone through the experience of quitting what's not good for me. And then what am I going to do with myself? How am I going to cope? Right? But allowing yourself that little bit of grace, that little bit of time by taking yourself away from it, right? It clears your mind. Maybe not your brain. Your brain will still go 100 miles an hour. There is a difference between thinking and mindfulness, right? Right? Don't dwell on things. Don't beat yourself up, but be mindful, like in a third party, because like the self parenting, like you're your own parent and look at yourself and treat yourself like you're that child, right? And take care of yourself because a lot of this trauma is just set in place from our own upbringings, right? And that's our childhoods, right? And there was lacking in that, right? Whether we want to admit it or not, right? And so we do need to self parent ourselves. We do need to care for ourselves like our best friends. And in that process, be your cheerleader, right? Right? You gotta get that hunch. Oh, I want that nicotine gum, or I want to go to the casino, or I want to go shopping, right? Just maybe I'll go for a walk. It's a nice day today. I'm going to go for a walk and just enjoy the breeze and the fresh air and the topics that come across your path, right? Get addicted to something healthy. Allow yourself that space and that time, right? Maybe you like the country drives. Get out of the city for a little while. Appreciate being by yourself, right? If you can be by yourself in your addictions, you can be by yourself in your hobbies and in your interests. And you might find that your hobbies and interests become your missions, right? They become your purpose in life. Because I believe all of us, our purposes is to be the example for others in what we get right. And we can be the examples for others too in what we get wrong, right? And find ourselves alone. Yeah. Okay. Um, no smoking in public places, designated places, unless it's designated. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, so some places you still can smoke then. That's interesting. Yeah, here any public place is a no no, right? I don't think you can even go to the park and smoke. I don't think so. I could be wrong in that. I've never seen smokers in the park. But bus stops, I see smokers all the time in the bus stop. In the wintertime, they have the bus shacks, right? And I used to be told all the time, that you can't smoke in here. You can't smoke here. Get away from me, right? I smelled cigarette smoke is stinky, right? And I was a smoker and I took quite offense to that. It made me feel bad that people looked at me or thought different of me because I was a smoker. Again, that guilt and shame, right? Right? Excuse me. Again, that guilt and shame. And so I would stand at the bus after these new laws came into effect, and I'd be in the bus shack, right? Or I would be outside at the bus stop and I would have a cigarette outside at 40 below zero. And somebody says, "Can you go off and do that somewhere else?" And I'd point at the bus shack and I go, "There's the non smoking section." Like, you're not even going to take the outdoors away from me. Okay, I can't smoke indoors anymore. I can't smoke in public places anymore, right? But, I'm outside. I'm at a bus stop, like, and I would be argumentative in that. And now I'm that person, right? I don't say that to anybody anymore because, again, I sympathize and empathize with people because I was that person. I was that smoker, right? Oh my goodness, nothing worse than somebody coming in outside after being outside having a cigarette, right? Because that's where they have to go now. When they have a cigarette, they have to go outside. They go outside and have a cigarette and they walk back in the building. They get on the elevator with me and I could just like smell cigarette smoke, right? Standing beside somebody having a cigarette doesn't bother me at all. But that cigarette smoke on clothes is just like that, right? Yeah. My brother is a recovering alcoholic. He had a problem about 26 years ago drinking, and he has been sober for 8 years. Congratulations. That is absolutely amazing, which I'm very proud of him. He still fights the demon, and he does do the triple or the AA, right? And I'm just coming down here. But yeah, congratulations to him too. And I was going to say about that, Tammy. I know you take your brother for drives and stuff, right? You guys go for outings and stuff, which is absolutely amazing because, when you come off alcohol, it kind of tends to take the joy out of your life, right? So it's important to bring on new interests and new hobbies because otherwise you've kind of based your life on the drinking and you've snatched something away. And there's a name for what happens. And it's a form of depression, right? When you quit drinking. And that's the depression is again, like you were talking about the demons that are in your head saying, I want to drink, and I'm so bored. What am I going to do? I wish I had a drink. And then you have to fight that constantly, right? But those good addictions, they are out there. But the good addictions, they're the hobbies, they're the interests. Like I said, it's why people start diets and start exercising, right? On New Year's Day, because they need a new addiction. And it works quite often. You'll have a much better chance at staying on your diet if you exercise at the same time. I'm not a high impact exercise person. I never wasn't into weightlifting or running, right? When it came to sports, I only did team sports because I had to, and I wasn't bad at it, but right, it wasn't enjoyable, but that was more of an emotional, mental thing because of, being an obese teenager. It was embarrassing again, that guilt and shame, right? But high impact exercise, I never did it. And I'm glad, I have to tell you, I am glad I didn't do the high impact exercise, that I wasn't a jogger or a runner, right? Because, I make that joke all the time. You see customers come in, and you just wonder, how these young men, they're 30 years old and they're like broken old men because they do that contract work, that heavy work. They're in the football teams and they ruin their knees and their shoulders, and right, that they're not fit anymore, and they still have 60 years of their life to not even look forward to, because now they're dwelling on the aches and pains, right? I was always low impact. Swimming, walking, hiking, yeah, riding my bike. That was my exercise. And it works, right? You burn the calories. I'm a big believer in the baby steps. Every single addiction that I got over, and I had lots of them, silly ones too, like crunching ice and being addicted to cough drops and payday loans and, oh my goodness, Vicks, right? Oh my goodness, I smelled like a medicine cabinet. I don't know how my husband even got it into his mind that he would give me a kiss. Like, oh my goodness, I smelled like a medicine cabinet. Just awful, right? But I would do it in baby steps, right? Not just say, um, um, I'm just going to have 2 cigarettes a day. No, I would quit smoking, right? But my baby steps were to keep myself busy doing other things, not working myself to the bone, but doing enjoyable things. Because my enjoyable things were my addictions, right? My enjoyable things, right? That's why we're addicted to them, because they calm the system, they make us happy. They're all ours. There's something unique and different. We're unique and different because we do this and nobody else does this, right? This is ours. Yeah, and we take care of those things, right? But the idea is to find better ways to cope, right? Better ways to cope. And these organizations like AA, right? They are amazing. They really are. I've never been to any of those meetings, but I've known people who've gotten off the drugs and the booze and been off them for a very long time and still go to those meetings and find friends and partners. And they say you're not supposed to find your partners in these organizations, because if one fails in their addiction, the other one has a bigger chance of failing too. But I know couples who are still together and doing quite well, and they met in these organizations. sometimes you need that camaraderie, right? Somebody who truly understands what you went through, and you get to be the support for each other in that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I don't. I wish I did. Addictions is a big problem in this world because it's so secretive. It's so private. And yet, right? Not so private, isn't it? Because it affects everybody in our life. It affects all our relationships, and we find ourselves alone in it, right? Yeah. I didn't know we were going to talk about addictions today, but what is NA? I don't know what NA is, um, Tammy. Uh, right? But that's a cope. When I talk about step down, Tammy, that's what I talk about. Like, what is the lesser addiction? What is something that you can, oh, Narcotics Association. Wow, amazing. Tammy, that's amazing that he did that for himself. That he did that for himself. And that's really, really hard too, especially because you mentioned before that he has ADHD, right? So it makes it even more uh, of um, a responsibility and a chore to get these things done, right? So you sit with him during the meetings and stuff too, Tammy? I don't mean to be nosy in it, but it is very helpful, for people to understand. It is something that we are all prevalent to, right? And you know, I was very private in all of them, but all of them were out there. Everybody could see them. They were just not allowed to be the topic of discussion, right? They weren't. If I could do something in private, I would, right? Yeah. Even when I let people think for the longest time that I had quit gambling, but I was just going to different places that I had maybe not quit gambling, but I had cut it down a great deal. But I didn't. I was just gambling at different places, right? Every penny that I had. And then I would borrow money to pay my bills, and then I would use that money, again, the guilt and shame, right? To go and try and chase that wind down so I can pay all my bills and get on top of everything and fill up the cupboards and give my husband a few dollars so he can enjoy his own life, right? And then his payday would come in and I would take it, letting him know I had to pay bills and groceries and stuff. And he knew I gambled too, right? Never got angry with me with that, right? It was my responsibility. I guess, he cared for me enough that he knew that there was nothing that he could do about it. But he never cut me off of the money, right? I racked his cards up on that too, right? In the gambling. That's what addiction does to you. Makes you sneakity, right? It's a great shame in my life, right? It did great damage to my future, which is right now because of that, right? Yeah. You can't go back into the past, right? You can only learn from the past. You can't fix it. What's done is done. And you can only learn the lessons from that experience. And I go in there and I put myself in those shoes again and look at them from the perspectives of, well, that self parenting that I do, right? And also in the shoes of the people that I affected in that experience that I had. Yeah, addictions. How do we get on that? It's a good topic. It is a good topic, and it's a topic that does serve people, right? Uh, you are a great overcomer, Cindy. You are a great survivor too, and I am proud of you too. Ah, Cindy. Tammy, thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's one thing, I credit my parents, right? We are survivors. At the very least, we are survivors. But I am a recognizer too. And there's nothing worse than feeling guilt and shame. There's nothing worse than letting the people that you love down. There's nothing worse than seeing your life fall apart in every aspect, right? You have to save yourself. You have to save yourself, right? Yeah. And that's the idea, right? And like I said, I don't have all the answers. Baby steps work for me. Taking really a big interest in my hobbies, right? Bringing new topics into my life that I could delve into. This YouTube channel, like I said, has been a great help to me, right? And being that example for others that it can be done, right? That it can be done because it can be done. It can be done in a way where you don't lose your joy for life. You actually add joy to your life, right? Yeah. Uh, I'm going to leave it at that in the moment. I'm going to pull a card. If you've never hung out with me before, 54 powerful words. Thank you for hanging out with me. I didn't mean to go in that heavy and make it kind of like a lesson tonight that way. I like to keep the topics light and then just kind of, right, add them into the conversation. But you know what? It's in helping others. It is in being the example to others in our lives, right? And being honest and genuine in that. Because we know when people are being sneaky, we know when people are hiding things. But because we love them, we care for them, we don't want to shame them, right? Embarrass them, that sometimes we don't want to agitate them. That was a big one, right? Because I would shut them down. If anybody mentioned my issues, I would shut it down in a minute. That conversation was not open for discussion, right? So that agitation was there too, right? And there was no getting through to me, right? That was my fun. That was my joy. I had an excuse for anything, any kind of comment, any intrusion into what I was doing, because I considered it an intrusion, right? That's my business. Don't worry about it. But in the end, it was affecting everybody. And the person that it affected the most was myself. I'm so grateful not to be a liar. I'm so grateful, right? Not to feel that extent of guilt and shame like I did when I was gambling. I'm grateful that I recognized that I was destroying my life, right? And I didn't always do it early, right? Like I said, I gambled for over 20 years. Over 20 years, I gambled, and I gambled hard, right? I gambled hard. I was making good money, but you would never know it. You would never know it because it was all gone, right? Gone. Okay. You guys, 54 powerful words. Sometimes it's pertinent to the conversation, sometimes it's not. I'm going to say probably it's not tonight because we just get the whole conversation on gambling, right? But the word we have today, it does. Tammy, it just kills me how they always become relevant to the conversation. Inspiration is the realization that we can aspire to that too, right? If somebody in my audience is a drinker, right? Tammy's brother has overcome it, has made it a mission for himself to not be a drinker anymore. If you're a gambler, I'm not gambling anymore. I will never, ever touch another gambling machine. I'm not another dime, not a quarter, nothing. Right? Right? And that's a hard one, but it's something that I'm so proud of, right? That I know, like, I know there is no, oh my goodness, I'm having a bad day. I want to go and take my paycheck, or I want to, right, go borrow some money and go play gambling. There's none of that, right? It'll never, ever happen because I'm that parent for myself. I hold myself accountable. I keep my word. We had this last week. I keep my word to myself, right? It's where it came from, is in my need to understand that I have a very addictive personality, that some things are hard to overcome, that we need coping mechanisms. But there are good coping mechanisms out in the world, healthy ones, right? I'm not going weightlifting, but I'll delve a little bit deeper into the emotions. I'll get myself out onto the road. I'll go for a walk. I'll read books, right? I'll go metal detecting and bottle digging and things that I love, right? Stay connected to the world and smile, right? And that's the most important thing because I know how I felt when I was deep into it, right? It's not a good feeling. It isn't a good feeling. But that inspiration is the examples out there, right? Because they're the evidence. Inspiration is the realization that we can aspire to that too. Okay, you guys. That's my good cheer. Aw, thank you. You should celebrate. You have some times to celebrate and do something good for yourself in overcoming your addictions, right? You do it for your brothers sometimes too. That's beautiful. I love that, right? Because again, when we come off our addictions, we lose a little bit of that joy because our addictions were our joy. But you taking them out for drives and right, doing nice things from being his caregiver, right? These are things that because if he was a drinker, if he was a drug addict, if he was out of hand, how would you cope with that? He would have lost you completely because that's what our addictions do, chase everybody away, make it so people don't want to be around us. How was your Instagram channel post today? Thank you, Tammy. It was good. I got my post out. I talked a little bit about, I posted a abandoned church photo that I had. It was a beautiful little church on one of my outdoor explores I came across. It was on a farm, and I went and explored this church, and I took a picture of it, and the picture was beautiful. So I posted that picture today, and I talked about, the difficulties when the first settlers came to Canada and they first settled the land, right? And, how they didn't grumble and complain because there was no point, right? Nobody was coming to save them. They had to save themselves, right? And they just took care of each other in their communities. They just pulled up their pants and just got the job done. And we grumble and complain today with all the luxuries, all the things that make life easy. They didn't even have running water, toilets. They didn't have heat. They had to boil it on a wood stove, right? That, they didn't have cars. They had to walk 6 miles to school, without a new pair of shoes. World War One, smallpox, right? Cholera, the depression. They got hit, smacked hard, but they pulled through, right? Pulled through. We got life so easy, right? We look at the world and we say it's the worst of times ever. It's not. It's bad times. But I tell you, I wouldn't want to go back 100 years, right? And have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning like I do now to scoot off to the outhouse at 40 below zero in my pajamas, right? No, right? I like life. I like having electricity and running water, be able to go for a bike ride, have air conditioning, right? Have my computer, have my YouTube channel, be able to expand in myself, to be able to understand emotions at this day and age where we are this close, right? What kind of an example can we be to each other, right? We live in a great age. It's a miracle, this day and age that we live in right now. We all grumble and complain. That joke that, when we were kids, mom would say, get outside, go outside and play, right? And now moms say that to the kids. They grab their phone, they sit out in the backyard in the lawn chair, they play on their phone. Right? But in our choices, we can make some movement. We can be the example for each other. We can appreciate that it's not so bad in this world, right? We're seeing the bad because we're this close to each other now. Anywheres in the world, we're this close to each other. So it's important for us not to get addicted, right, to the headline news. Everybody's vying for our attention, and we each get to choose where our attention's going to go, right? I'd like to go, my attention to go to that little bit of positivity and that large bit of understanding where we got things wrong and where we got things right. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, for coming in.